Hey, welcome back to another 2-Minute Tuesday. So in the last couple of 2-Minute Tuesdays, we've been focusing on the journey of home rolling from start to finish, of how to go about it, how to pick your base mix, how to pick your flavors, how to pick your powdered additives. So in this particular video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how I go about fishing and prepping my bait, priming my bait for the session ahead. I'm going to try and do it relatively fast, but you know the score. I am absolutely useless at getting it to the 2 minutes. It goes way beyond that, but it's a pointless exercise. But anyway, 2 minutes on the clock. My choice of bait is a big factor. I'm a huge fan of trigger ice and BFM. Rather than just use one bait on its own, I'm quite a big fan of using trigger ice and BFM all mixed together in the same bucket and feeding it, because I don't know, I have this thing of on any given day, fish start to show certain preferences for different baits, and I think it just gives you more options. They're all our premium baits anyway. As soon as I get here, I start air drying a portion of my bait. I take a couple of scoops of each bait and I put them into a bucket of lake water. Water comes straight from the lake, poured in, and then I add my additives. And I like to go in with the krill liquid booster, trigger liquid booster. I also like to put a good dollop of the trigger liquid food. The liquid boosters work in a very particular way. They're full of sugars, amino acids and free agents that are going to really pump out attraction, and it's really important to hold on to that water, not to drain it off at any stage. Once the baits have been soaking for a few hours, I start to take out what I need to fish with, and I leave the main boilies in the main bucket still soaking, and I will leave them there for as long as a week if I have to. So my next stage is to move over to my boilie crusher, and mine is the Ridge Monkey one. And what I do is I take out of the soaking boilie bucket enough bait to fish my 3 rods, and what I do is I crush up that amount and leave the rest soaking for a while. Once the boilies are crushed, they go into the main bucket. I then add hemp, a few tiger nuts, and then the next big thing is the carpet feed. I usually use a mixture of trigger and trigger ice carpet feed, and I put a good sprinkling of that in. What that does is it acts like a ground bait, but it's not a ground bait. It's got a lot of the ingredients that are already in those main boilies, and it pumps out that nutritional signal straight into the water column. Once the carpet feed is in, I move over to my pellets. We do a range of pellets. We do trigger ice, BFM. So they're matching the hatch, so to speak, of the boilies I'm using. We do a whole range of other, sort of rapid breakdown pellets, and we also have the river range of pellets. But for me, I like to use 8, 4mm and 2mm pellets, and I like to use them the way I like to use my boilies. I like to mix around the different sizes and the different flavors. So for me, I'm using the trigger 8mm. I also have some BFM in 2mm, and I also have some trigger ice in the 4mm. So I've got a number of different sizes and a number of different flavors all working through the mix. Once this is all mixed together, I then like to add some of the juice, the water, out of the main boilie bucket, where the boilies have been slowly steeping, releasing a lot of that goodness and a lot of that into the water. I'm now going to use that to wet the mix down. And once that's done, it's just a case of leave it and use it as and when you need. Now, there will be large bits of boilies in it. There'll be crushed up boilies. There'll be half boilies from the crusher, because it doesn't get them all very, very fine. The lake I'm fishing is full of silverfish, and there's also some fairly substantial bream, anywhere between 7 and 10 pound that knock around. What I'm hoping to do with the smaller feed items is to get those silverfish munching around and causing a disturbance and putting more scent and trail in the water from eating the smaller pieces. So when the carp do come around, they've got the larger pieces to have a go at, but there's not going to be that huge amount. I might put out about 2 kilo per rod, but because the actual mix is very fine and broken down, it is very quickly snapped up by the small silverfish, but there's always that scent in the water, the flavor trail, and then the small bits of food that the silverfish can't really attack, but the carp will have a go at. And obviously then your hook bait's in the middle. So that's how I prep my main feed for the lake. And I do this on pretty much every venue I go to now, and it seems to work really well for me, so I don't really change it too much. My hook bait for this particular venue, because of those silverfish, has to be a little bit special too, and I'm going to show you what it is and how to prep that as well. Due to the silverfish, I have to be very careful what hook bait I use. I don't want anything that's going to go too soft where they can actually whittle it down overnight, and by the morning time when the feeding slot comes, there's no bait on my hook. So what I like to use is the Trigger 16mm hard hooker with a 12mm Liver Supreme pop-up. Now I do pimp up my Trigger hard hookers a little bit. Out of the tub, they're perfect. They have the right amount of gels to keep them hard. They have the right amount of flavor and attractors in them to stimulate the carp to feed on it. I like to give them a little bit of va-va-voom. That little bit of extra something that's going to build my confidence up. And in fairness, the carp like it. So I'm going to show you how I prep my trigger hook baits now. So into that, I will put in a good dollop of the Trigger Bait Soak Complex. The Trigger Bait Soak Complex is an amazing product, and the carp really get hugely turned on by it. Very water soluble, really pumps out the attractors into the water column. To that, I like to add a teaspoon of green lipped mussel extract and about a half teaspoon of liver powder. I then shake the hell out of it and let it sit. I like to prep these well in advance. What I want is the liquid to absorb into the bait and for the actual powders to adhere to the outside of the hard hooker and then become like a very dried in attractor that the minute it hits the water it starts to dissolve and pump out real strong stimulants into the water column. It may seem a lot of hard work, but I do believe in things like this will give you an edge with the other anglers, especially if they're on the same baits as you. It's well worth pimping and giving your hook baits that little bit of extra oomph. So this is Gerry, 2 Minute Tuesday. That's how I kind of prep for my sessions when I'm on the bank, and keep on trucking. Gerry out.